Recorded.
Well, I think that means everybody is coming in. I'm just seeing all the numbers going up. Firstly, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining. This session is going to be on it's for careers advisors to help you help students come to the bar. We've got some great people here to help. And I think the first thing to do maybe is to introduce everybody. I should start by saying my name is Lucinda. I am a barrister, but actually I am an employed barrister. There is about 20% of the bar are employed, and we can discuss that as an option because it's very important that students know there's many different routes into the bar and there's many different ways you can practice as a barrister. And I'm a partner in a law firm in the City of London. But let's introduce all the different inns while they're here. So starting with Lincoln's.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Alexis. I am the outreach coordinator at Lincoln's Inn.
And then Inna.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jess. I'm the outreach coordinator at Inner Temple, and my colleague Steph is also here. She is going to be kind of off camera, and she might be answering questions as you put them in the Q&A. So if you see her name pop up, it's not a mysterious person that you've never heard of. It's Steph, and she also works at Inner Temple with me.
We've got Middle.
Hello, yeah, my name's Richard Frost. I'm the outreach officer at Middle Temple.
And finally, the best inn, I would say that because it's mine, Grace.
I would agree, Lucinda. Hi, everyone. I'm Niamh. I'm the Outreach and Scholarship Officer at Gray's Inn.
Thank you all very much. This is the kind of programme that we're going to be following. I'm just going to say a bit of kind of background first, and then the session will be the Inns of Court overview you're going to get from all the four lovely people you've just heard from, all the outreach officers from the four inns, then the wider professional opportunities from the Bar Council itself, from Kian, who is also there if you want to wave so people can see you. And then there's going to be a panel discussion with various barristers, and you'll see who the list is there. Some of them are already online. Emily's already here, but I think Gary and Lidia might join a bit later at 10:30. So just a very quick overview. I'm sure most of you will already know this, but just so everyone has it in their head as fresh as possible, the way to the bar, you have to, as a student, you can obviously read a law degree or a degree in another subject and do a law conversion, which sets you at the same level as someone who's done a law degree. And then if you want to come to the bar, you do this course specific for the bar. So those who are obviously going to have to be solicitors will go and do the LPC course, but those becoming barristers go and do the bar course. And I always explain it to people as, very rudely, when I was on the bar course, we used to say that the LPC taught people how to pick up the phone and be nice to clients. And the bar course taught you the practical skills you needed to be on your feet. So you will learn kind of negotiation, cross-examination, examination in chief, and a little bit, therefore, like acting school, because the first time in my life, I was actually going to exams and doing kind of performance. So it's, you'd be marked on a performance. And so that's the bar year. And before the end of the bar year, you must join an inn. But actually, and something to tell your students, it's much better if you can join an inn earlier. So I actually joined my inn before I even started the GDL, the Graduate Diploma in Law, because the inns have got loads of resources and loads of help. So the kind of students who wait until the kind of May of their bar year to join an inn, A, have not very much time to do all the qualifying sessions, but B, don't get all the opportunities and help that they would have got if they had been in the kind of the confines of the inn system beforehand. And then, so once you've finished your bar school year, the route for qualification is pupillage. And we'll hear kind of during the course of today how you can help yourself with pupillage. One of the ways is obviously the inns offer scholarships both for the GDL and the bar course, and even actually for pupillage. And therefore, another reason to get involved in the Inns early is because they can help with funding. And if you are kind of practicing pupillage interviews, you will it will already have helped you if you've had scholarship interview practice. So the kind of the direction of travel for a student, if the earlier they can start thinking about that they want to go to the bar, makes it much easier for them for the end goal, which is pupillage. And in fact, the kind of final hurdle is after your year of pupillage, tenancy. And that's what, you know, most people really want. But as I alluded to right at the start, there are other ways into the profession. It's not just through the original or sort of the way pupillage is done in chambers. There's now actually many other ways people can do pupillage, and it's also very important that students are aware it's not just one system anymore. If you want to join the kind of graduate diploma and the government legal service, for example, that offers pupillage, and there are various law firms that offer pupillage as well. So there's really quite a number of ways now for pupillage to be gained by students. And so I think that was just kind of as a background setup before we move on. And the final thing to say is obviously that the 4 Inns, so you choose your inn, but the Bar Council sits above it all. The Bar Council is the representative body, so kind of the union for members, and that obviously has lots of resources as well, which Kian will tell you about at 10:30. So the kind of, there's 2 sides. The Bar Council is the representative side, and then the Bar Standards Board is the regulatory side. And hopefully we won't have to discuss regulatory side at all, because most barristers hopefully will never have much to do with the regulation side, because they'll be, you know, good barristers. But that was the kind of introduction. And then I think probably it's best to hand over to the Inns of Court overview, because I know they've got some lovely slides.
Thank you very much, Lucinda. So yeah, we're just going to start by kind of describing what it is that the Inns of Court do. So we are professional associations, so all student barristers must be a member of an inn, and yes, I'm going to start that again. Student barristers must be a member of an Inn of Court, and membership is for life, subject to certain conditions. We also offer compulsory training for students, pupils, and junior barristers. So yeah, we'll go into a little bit more on that in the next slide. We also have the exclusive right to call students to the bar. We also have supervisory and disciplinary functions, things like student conduct, I presume similar things to what a university would deal with on the student level. And of course, when it comes to barristers and working with the BSB, we kind of collaborate on decisions that get made there as well. And we also offer support for our members too. So things like scholarships, access to the libraries, mentoring schemes, advice, both professional and personal. And we also provide plenty of career support and professional development and networking opportunities as well. But yes, whilst the Inns all have a professional staff, much like the 4 of us who are here today, we also work very closely with members who actually volunteer to sort of give up their time to help out with a lot of these schemes and opportunities. So that's something that we always like to point out when we're doing stuff. Now, when it comes to qualifying sessions, there are 5 themes. They are ethics, standards, and values, advocacy skills, legal knowledge, justice, and the rule of law, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and preparation for pupillage, career development, and well-being. These qualifying sessions need to be completed as part of your bar course. And there are 10 in total that you would need to complete, and you need a minimum of one of each of these 5 themes included as part of that. Some people like to do it quite evenly, so they'll do 2 of each. Some people prefer to do sort of 1 or 4 of them and maybe 6 of the other. But as long as each of them is represented at least once in the 10 qualifying sessions you completed, then you should be good to go, essentially. In terms of what these sessions could be, they could be a combination of lectures and panel talks, advocacy workshops, ethics workshops, legal research seminars, residential weekends, dinners, and mooting/mock trials. So yeah, when students are booking themselves onto these sessions, they'll be made aware of the theme that each session is part of, and obviously what the session might entail. Right, I'm going to pass over to my colleagues now to talk about activities and support for student members. I've forgotten which one of us is next.
It's me, don't worry, I
Okay.
remember, so that's okay. That's the important bit. Yeah, so once someone is a student member of an inn, there are lots of different kinds of activities and support they can get involved in. So just to say, the things on this slide are reserved for student members. Across the 4 inns, we may work slightly differently in terms of who is entitled to those, but certainly in a temple, the emphasis on certain schemes they're provided for bar course students as the sort of primary audience, because that's kind of the people who perhaps need them the most. So things like mentoring and marshalling, those are obviously very sort of popular schemes. So certainly at Inner, they are predominantly reserved for bar course students. And I will kind of say up front, these things are usually oversubscribed. They're very popular. So it's important for students to try and engage with them when they are offered in the first instance. We tend to work first come, first served. Certainly one of the advantages to joining in a little bit early, like Lucinda was talking about, is using the kind of the student societies. So we have debating and mooting societies, drama societies, particularly if someone is studying at a university, perhaps where they don't necessarily have that provision. They don't have perhaps a really big law department. They don't have an active mooting society. It can be really beneficial to then kind of engage with that via their inn if they join while still on their law degree, or kind of as they start the GDL. So that can be really beneficial. And then also we sort of cover a variety of kind of wellbeing initiatives as well, in terms of what student members are entitled to. And so once you become a student member, you're a member of a student association. Lots of people, they hear student societies and they think of their university where there are over 100, and most of their inns just have kind of 3 or 4 student societies, and the priority is skills that are related to then becoming a successful barrister, as opposed to perhaps some of the slightly sillier ones that you get at university. So in addition to the activities and support for student members, we do also, as kind of inns, run schemes that are aimed more at university students or aspiring barristers. So at Inner Temple, we run a scheme called PASS, which is the Pegasus Access and Support Scheme. And that is for people who haven't started the bar course yet, from certain sort of socioeconomic backgrounds, underrepresented at the bar. So we can include details about that sort of in follow-up communication. Niamh, would you like to mention kind of one that Grays does for aspiring barristers?
Sure, thanks. And I just want to mention the follow-up communication. In the email that you receive after this, there will be probably too many links to stuff that all of the inns do for both members and like prospective members. Yeah, pretty much at Grays we function the same way. Just some things that your students might want to be aware of are our advocacy day that's happening now in October, and we have another in March. And all of the inns run tours of the inn. I've got links included in the follow-up email to those as well. They're a great way to come along and like see what prospectively could be done for you at the inn. We offer some schemes to certain university students, and we collaborate a lot with university societies. So knowing those contacts is probably your best way to get them involved. Thanks, Jess.
And Alexis, do you want to mention anything that Lincoln's does for prospective members?
Yeah, so we have things like our mini pupillage grant scheme, which is allows students to apply for financial aid when partaking in mini pupillages. We also have our Newberger and Helen Grindrod prizes, which are again designed to help students who might not necessarily have a massive amount of connections at the bar. And that comes with a whole list of sort of smaller prizes that again you'll see in an email with a sort of detailed breakdown of when their applications are opening and things like that too.
Cool. And then Richard, yeah, speak about middle, and then I believe you're the next slide.
Yeah, I'll just go straight into it now, I suppose. So yeah, middle, we have a program called Access to the Bar. This is a funded work experience scheme over 2 weeks. Spend 1 week with a chambers, 1 week marshalling for a judge, and I think passes like this as well, isn't it, Jess? With we will fund them. So at middle, we award £700. So it's roughly in line with minimum wage. Basically means that if they are going to have to miss 2 weeks of time they would have otherwise spent working in the summer, they can still do the scheme and not take the hit to their bank account. So very important, useful scheme, and like Niamh says, we'll have the links for the application process in the follow-up email. And then should we go straight on to scholarships and support? Thanks, Alexis. Just put the whole info up. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the scholarships that we provide. This is an expensive career path. The fees are very high. And the good news is that there's a lot of support available. So the INS are probably the main source of financial support at this stage. Our scholarships that you see on the screen, and we will be sharing these slides out afterwards, so I don't feel you need to be jotting all this down. But we award a pretty substantial amount each, between £1 and £1.5 million each every year. The key thing on this slide I want to stress is that the scholarships are awarded based on merit. So the decision to make the award is always based on the student's capability and suitability for the bar, how likely we think they are to succeed in the profession. The financial circumstances is the secondary consideration. That's when we make the decision to make the award. And then the size of the award will typically be based on their individual finances and circumstances. That means that while the typical award for most students will be in the region of £10,000 to £12,000, I have seen these awards get rated up much, much higher in the £25,000 to £26,000 range. Equally, for many candidates, they will not need any money from us at all. They'll tell us as much, and they will receive the scholarship with a nominal sum, varies from in to in, but they'll receive a nominal sum. And then they'll have the prestige of the IN scholarship, and that can be very important for a lot of candidates. An IN scholarship is a sort of seal of quality. It's something that chambers will look for as well. So there's basically no good reason not to apply for one of these awards, regardless of what your circumstances are. Students should give themselves a shot at this. It's always going to be helpful, whether they need the money or not. Okay. The other thing I'd like to point out from this slide as well is that there are other sources available as well. So a lot of the bar course providers will offer comparatively smaller but still very useful scholarships. And there's a lot of other ways you can sort of top things up. Charities and trusts. I've got a large volume on my desk, the directory of grant making trusts, and these can make awards to students for all kinds of different reasons. It could be from particular parts of the country, or if they are members of particular groups, maybe they're a member of a particular church, for example. So there's all kinds of ways that you could potentially access additional funding on top, and it is well worth the students to start investigating these avenues relatively early, so they can start forming a good coherent plan about how they're going to fund themselves. It is there's some serious risk involved in going into this without a good financial plan, so we want to avoid that if at all possible, and this is something else that the INs are here to help with. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of preparation, I would encourage all of you to have a look at the scholarships criteria at the different INS websites. Broadly speaking, the criteria is the same at all 4 of the INs, but we do have some slight differences in terms of number of criteria and exactly how we phrase things and term things and so on. There are also some important differences in the applications process. So, for example, here at Middle Temple and at Inner Temple, we interview every candidate who applies for the award, whereas at Gray's and Lincoln's Inn, they will do an initial paper sift. But I should stress that the overall success rate statistically is about the same at all of the inns. So regardless of how we do it, your chances are just as good at any of them. But it's worth being aware of some differences. Obviously, it may suit different students better. If you feel that you're very strong on paper and you want to be sure of getting through to the interview, maybe Gray's and Lincoln's is a good shout. If you feel that maybe you're a little bit weaker on paper and you want to be guaranteed the interview because you know that's where your strengths lie, then maybe Middle and Inner are the best option for you. I'll elaborate a little bit on the criteria as well, just while we're on the call. I'll talk about Middle Temple's process. Like I said, it's broadly the same at all of them. This is just the one I'm most familiar with. So we are looking for, first and foremost, intellectual ability. We want candidates who have got good academic record. Generally speaking, we are looking at a 2-1 minimum. We do make exceptions where there are mitigating circumstances, and it's important that students understand that if there is a situation they find themselves in that has impacted their performance academically, they need to make it known, because we will factor it in, we will be sympathetic, we will be understanding, but they need to communicate that with us. But generally speaking, we're looking at strong degrees as a minimum. We will also want to see students that have really started to engage with their subject in that intellectual manner. They're interrogating it, they're asking themselves why. I think, contributing in seminars, attending tutorials, discussing the subject in depth with their tutors is a very important thing to be doing from first year onwards. These are the habits that will mean that when they come into interview, they know what to expect and they feel comfortable in the setting. Moving on, the next point of the criteria is about their motivation. And a lot of this is often to do with work experience. And we've got on the slide discussing about mini pupilages. And this is the standard type of work experience that we're going to be looking for. And I think what I would want to emphasize to all of you on the call right now is that these are difficult opportunities to come by, okay? There's a lot of competition. There is not that many places available. They do need to play a numbers game with this, okay? They need to be sending in applications, knowing, and like at the bottom it says, rejection is inevitable. They need to send in these applications knowing that they probably won't get, a 9 out of 10 of them, but it's all about that 1 in 10 chance and actually securing it. Another thing I'd like to stress for you guys and how you advise your students is make sure that they are tailoring their applications. When they write to a chambers, make sure that they've done their research, they've looked into the areas of law that Chambers practices, maybe looked up some of the cases that their practitioners have worked on, and make sure that they address that in their application. Biggest complaint that I hear from barristers' chambers who are running their mini pupillage schemes is that they receive applications with an obviously generic CV and application, often with easily avoidable mistakes like you've applied to a family law set for mini pupillage and you've mentioned on your CV that you're an aspiring criminal practitioner. They're just not going to be interested. Make sure that you're tailoring the applications and you know who you're applying for. Mini pupillages, though, aren't the be-all and end-all. There is a lot of other types of experience out there, and it is all valuable and useful. If they get the chance to shadow in a solicitor's firm, they should take it. They are going to be working with solicitors very closely in their career. They want to know how the other half operates. Law clinics at universities and things like that, very useful, although I should stress that they should tell us if it's something that they were getting credit for at the university, because we are also looking here for those who are going the extra mile. They are getting out there, they're looking for other opportunities. There's lots of charities and NGOs and advocacy groups that run volunteer schemes or vacation schemes. These are another avenue into getting relevant experience that we're looking for. We will also consider situations where, and like it says a little bit on here, legal example is not always the best example. We're looking for advocates, so it doesn't always have to be in a legal context. So if they can get involved with their community, with their student union, anything where they might find themselves in a situation where they will have to speak on behalf of somebody else, that's advocacy. And we'll often be looking to candidates who can address those kind of examples. So it doesn't always have to be in a strictly legal context, and we will value other types of experience as well. And I think that's important to remember, particularly for the students who are working alongside their degrees and maybe are a little bit pushed financially and for time to take time out to do mini pupilages. Sometimes your day job can also give you good relevant examples. Third point of the criteria is potential as an advocate. I think I've addressed a lot of that already. You know, they want to be getting out there, they want to be getting some experience. But another very important thing that they should be doing on their undergraduate degrees is mooting. I'm sure all of your universities will have a mooting competition, maybe a module on it. If not, I would stress to your students that there are other opportunities available as well. And even the ones who are doing it at the university should be looking out for these opportunities as well. Speedmooting.com, you know, national mooting competitions. There is a lot of opportunity out there. Even fairly informal competitions being organized amongst students is valuable experience. I would expect as a bare minimum for every student applying for Inns of Court scholarship for them to have mooting experience. They do not need to be an international champion for it to be useful and worth telling us about. If they get knocked out in the first round of every competition, that doesn't matter. What matters is what they've learned from those experiences. So the key thing is that they're doing it and they're also paying attention to the feedback they're receiving and they're constantly looking to improve. Last point that we have on our criteria at middle is to do with students' personal qualities. This is things like honesty and integrity. You know, again, I would stress to students that being involved in their communities, doing volunteering and so on is a good way to get themselves into situations where they're dealing with real people, real issues. And often I think that your ability to show your integrity, your honesty, etc., can be proven in those situations. It is also why, and again, for this audience, I would like to stress, academic misconduct is a career killer. Particularly in the modern era where we have AI and, you know, this does happen, people using ChatGPT to fill out application forms and stuff like that. If we spot it, if we get any sense that it's happening, that can seriously damage your career prospects. So I would want to emphasize to all students that any kind of cheating, academic misconduct is going to end their career before it's even begun. There is really nothing more to say on it than that. Okay, I think otherwise, the only other thing I'd like to address is just about references. References should be the easy part of an application. We ask for two, an academic reference and then a personal professional reference. Contextually, we will allow 2 academic references, or if somebody's been out of university for a while, we'll allow 2 personal references. But for this audience, again, I just want to stress it should be easy, particularly selecting an academic reference. And so what I would encourage students to understand from early on in their undergraduate degrees is that you want to be building your relationship with your tutors, which means, again, going to tutorials, contributing in seminars, responding positively to feedback on written work, etc. You know, it then becomes a default choice. You know exactly who you're going to approach for a reference, and they'll be happy to provide it. So it's just a case, again, of building up a good habit fairly early on in your academic journey, and making your life so much easier when it comes to apply for these critical awards. Okay, next slide, please, Alexis. Yeah, so this is a timeline. There's pupil year missing. I think, Alexis, just a little bit more info, I think. I just know. But we'll send this around, thanks. We'll send this around after the call anyway. I think the only other thing to mention that's relevant for this year is that the scholarship, major scholarship awards deadline is Friday the 1st of November. It's always the first Friday in November. Very important that students are aware of that. They get their applications in on time. They should be applying for their scholarship in the year prior to them starting the bar course. So those who are looking to start their bar course in September 2025 or January 2026, their deadline is this coming November. Yeah, otherwise a lot of this is fairly straightforward. I think the only comment I would have about this timeline is that it doesn't have to be quite this rigid. Students can take years out, they can do gap years, particularly if they're going to use that time to work on themselves and their applications. Maybe they're going to get some work experience during that time. Maybe they're going to use it to participate in a lot of mooting competitions and things like that. While it is true that there are some chambers that are very prescriptive in the kind of candidates that they're going to award pupillage to, they're looking for first-class degrees from particular universities and particular time frames and postgraduate qualifications, etc. For the vast majority of chambers, they're going to be quite flexible. So taking years out here and there is absolutely fine, particularly if it helps students to avoid academic burnout. This is a perfectly fine timeline, but everyone's going to be different. And like the previous slide said, rejection is inevitable. You may well find yourself in a situation where you do not get your scholarship, but you really need the finances from it. And so you take a year out and you apply again the following year, which you can do at no penalty. Likewise, pupillage, very unlikely to be awarded pupillage the first time of application. So you may find yourself applying for it in subsequent years as well. And that's normal, that's typical. Okay, I think that covers everything I want to talk about, so I'll pass on to my next colleague.
Lovely. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Alexis. Hi, everyone. I am Kian. I am the Policy Analyst in Education and CSR at the Bar Council. My role and responsibility there as well is not only looking at education training for barristers in the current profession, but it's also about highlighting and providing opportunities for those who are interested in a career at the bar as well, to support them in their journey to do so. So in the following slides, I have a list of opportunities and programs which might be of interest to your students. The first one on this slide is covering Bar Council programs in particular. The next one will go on to other external programs, and then I've also included a list of resources at the end there as well, which might be of use. So to kick off, 10KBI, or 10,000 Black Interns as it's otherwise known as, is a social mobility program, and it's a program which is aimed at young Black students in an undergraduate degree or who have completed an undergraduate degree. It's an incredibly valuable opportunity, and students will have an opportunity to have 6 weeks worth of paid internships across different chambers and different areas of practice. It's an incredibly useful experience, and students seem to really enjoy and engage with it. The next scheme that we have is Bar Placement Week, which is a social mobility scheme, and historically it's only been provided to sixth form and college students. However, this year we opened it up to first year undergraduate students, and we'll be running the process again for them in subsequent years as well. Students spend up to 3 days shadowing in a chamber, so they will have that mini pupillage experience there. But on the final day, on the Friday, they will also receive advocacy training with materials provided by the Inns of Court College of Advocacy, and they will undertake this as well at one of the Inns of Courts. So it allows them to also develop their soft skills there. Next, we have a law and reform essay competition at the Bar Council, and essentially students can enter our annual competition by submitting an essay making the case to reform an area of English, Welsh or European law. There is a financial award to this, and that is up to £4,000 which is awarded, and the winner will have their essay published on Council magazine. So it allows them to not only speak quite highly about this in their applications, whether it be for the Inns, whether it be for pupillage, but that financial award as well can also help a student in going on to support the cost of that bar training course. And finally, we have the Pupillage Fair 2024, which will commence on Saturday, 19th of October this year. That is the in-person fair. This will offer students an opportunity to go and speak to many different chambers spread across different practice areas. And in doing so, they can ask for top tips and advice on ways to improve their CVs, to improve their applications for scholarships, for mini pupilages, all of that good stuff that they need really. And an additional feature to this as well is the CV clinic. And the CV clinic will allow students to go in and speak to someone who is currently practicing as a barrister and have their CV looked at over, and also will receive those top tips and feedback on their CV in order to strengthen it for whatever applications that they're going for. As part of this as well, if students are unable to attend the London in-person session, we also have online sessions which are supported by SBAs, which are otherwise known as specialist bar associations, and they represent different areas of law, different practice areas. So throughout the week, there will be online sessions which include what life is like at the family bar, what life is like at the commercial and chancery bar, for instance. So it allows students to go and hear from the experts themselves who are currently practicing in these areas. Next slide, please, Alexis. Thank you. Here we have a list of external programs which are offered outside of the Inns and the Bar Council. The first one has been slightly touched upon, and that is pro bono work. Work can be conducted within your university law clinics as well. And there are two key organisations which are very useful to signpost to. Those are Advocate and the Free Representation Unit, otherwise known as FRU. And students can obtain that work experience, that key work experience that Richard was highlighting in the previous slides, which are really useful for their applications going forward. So in particular, Advocate, students can volunteer with through their casework programs, which are run throughout the year, and it allows students to have that hands-on experience by also supporting those seeking legal assistance. Again, the Free Representation Unit through students can volunteer, which provides free representation in areas of social security and employment tribunals for those who are not eligible for legal aid and can't afford lawyers as well. It's incredibly rewarding experience as well, and it really does have a true impact for those that they are supporting throughout. The next opportunity we have is Bridging the Bar. Again, this is a social mobility scheme which is targeted towards current and former undergraduate students. If successful, the BTB Academy, otherwise known as the Bridging the Bar Academy, offers a variety of different opportunities which range from mini pupilages to marshalling to mentoring. It really is a truly well-rounded program, and their students to go on to achieve all kinds of success. The next one we have is mentoring. So Cornerstone chambers have partnered with 9 chambers specialising in areas of property, planning and public law. Successful applicants will receive one-to-one sessions with a mentor. They will undergo workshops and have secure pupillage, and they will also have that in-person networking sessions, which again is incredibly useful if you're looking for top tips when you're in the middle of application season. Mini pupilages, which seems like a very broad statement to highlight, but I promise there is a really useful resource which I'll signpost to, and as you can see on the slide, it is Chambers students. So Chambers offer their own mini pupilages every single year. Successful applicants will shadow in the Chambers for around 3 to 4 days usually. If students approach you with any questions about how to get practical work experience within the Chambers itself, you can also signpost them to Chambers Student. And on the website, following the link, there is an extensive list of Chambers, which also includes application opening times and deadlines. Again, we would encourage students to look at the chambers that they like, look at the different practice areas that they might be interested in, and then hopefully they will be able to submit their applications in time. And the final opportunity here is from the specialist bar associations themselves. So certain SBAs are able to offer their own mentoring schemes. You can find these on their websites. Again, don't worry about extensively researching. There will be a list of resources at the end of this presentation, which will be circulated. But if you do want to make a note now, COMBAR, spelled COMBAR, and Criminal Bar are two notable examples of SBAs which provide their own mentoring schemes. And next slide, please, Alexis. Thank you. And here is another list of resources which will be useful for students. Again, this isn't necessarily about providing work experience opportunities for them, but it's helping them understand what chambers they might be interested in, what practice areas they might be interested in. You can see this through a variety of different resources listed here. I thought I would also include our Becoming a Barrister brochure, which speaks about the pathways into the profession, but also the Pupillage Gateway report, which we publish every single year. This is an incredibly useful report, which helps us to snapshot the types of candidates who are applying for pupillage every year, and also the ones that are successful. So if students are looking at the types of candidates who are securing pupillage every year, having a look at this information on the website and through the report will help them understand what types of candidates are being successful in their applications and how they can tailor their applications going forward as well. And I believe that is the end of my time now. So I'd like to pass on to my next colleague, please, if that's okay.
Well, thanks very much there, Kian, and also all the outreach officers. So we're now going to move on to a panel discussion and Q&A, and I've been seeing that there's been questions being put in the chat as it is. But for the panel discussion, we've got people at various stages of their career. And so if the panelists would just like to introduce themselves, maybe starting with Emily, if you'd like to turn on your mic and camera.
There we are. Yes, my name's Emily. I'm currently in my final week of pupillage at the Crown Prosecution Service. I was also a recipient of the Lord Denning Scholarship from the Inn, as well as the Lord Denning Bar Course Scholarship as well.
Thanks, Emily. And then Gary.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Mayfield. I am a part-time bar course student and also an exhibition scholar at Inner Temple. I passed my first year, which is the criminal component of the bar professional training course, and I'm just about to enter the second year, which is the civil component.
And Lidia.
Morning, everyone. My name is Lidia. I'm a practicing criminal and regulatory barrister at Drystone Chambers.
And then you already have heard from me. So I wanted to start by asking the panelists something which we haven't actually addressed yet. We're all different inns. Why did you choose your inn? Emily.
So I think the first thing that attracted me to the inn was the Lord Newberger Prize that the inn offered, because that was primarily offered to those that were studying at non-Russell Group universities. And the prize offered a lot of support, and it was support which I'd previously not had access to. So I felt that that would be a good opportunity for me. And I was awarded that prize and had a lot of support from the inn, and therefore I joined it. And then, of course, applied for a bar course scholarship and had support in that way. So essentially, it was just a case of looking at the inns and what support they could offer me and which I felt would be most beneficial in my circumstances.
Lidia, seeing as you've got your mic off.
It was the fact that Middle Temple was interviewing everyone.
Okay, and Gary?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think the opportunity to be interviewed as well as the application form gives you the opportunity to really give of your best. The inn has a really good look at you, you know, from start to finish. You don't get filtered out at an early stage. And importantly, with everybody being interviewed, you get that chance to look the panel in the eye and tell them in a straightforward manner why you're worth investing in.
And I should say I chose Grays because although they didn't interview everyone for scholarships, even when I was doing it, the numbers for the inn are small. It's a much smaller inn. And so it's known as, they like to say, the friendly inn. So I thought if I could get an interview, I had a better chance of kind of getting a scholarship and getting better links up through kind of all the different levels of students and barristers and even judges and High Court judges, etc., because the inn is smaller and so you get to know people quicker. So that's why I chose Grace. But I just thought I'd start with that because for students, it can be a bit kind of, you've got 4 inns, how do you choose them? So I'd say to the kind of student advisors out there listening from the universities that actually get your students to say, here, look at all the 4 inns. If they've got the ability, go and actually physically go to them, but definitely spend a lot of time on the websites and find which they think will fit best with them. And then I wanted to kind of ask everyone on the panel, why the bar? Because it is also the question that is fundamentally going to be asked as in all of the scholarships, all the pupilages. I mean, it's almost trite, but you will have to explain at some stage why you chose the bar. So Lidia, why the bar for you?
I'll try to give not a traditional answer, if I can put it like that, because I've done plenty of those answers in the various pupillage interviews I've had to attend. But to keep it short, I was in a mini and there was this person who was standing up doing the talking, and he was supported by 2 or 3 solicitors behind him. And I decided I wanted to be the person at the front speaking. That is probably very simple, but yes.
Yeah.
For me, it's about the independence. If you compare the solicitor's profession with the bar is very much about being self-employed if you're working in chambers. And I've worked all my career in sort of big organisations, and I wanted to take the best of that and also take a little bit of what makes me tick, really, which is the ability to stand up on your own 2 feet, really, and represent someone, but also be an advocate that's going to be independent, that's not going to be frightened to say difficult things. When you're in a corporate structure, it's very much you become entrenched into that corporate mentality, which obviously a lot of solicitors' firms are. Whereas I think the bar still retains that element of independence, and that for me is really important at this stage of my life and my career.
And then
So for me, I'd had a personal experience when I was younger, which initially instigated my interest in the law. I then did some experience with solicitors and barristers, and from that I was really able to see that I'm not somebody who wants to be sat in an office a lot. I really want to be in court, going to different places all the time. That really suits me as a person. And I also wanted to be an expert in advocacy because, frankly, I really enjoyed speaking. So that's essentially why I wanted to become a barrister.
Round off by saying my reasons for becoming a barrister were not entirely kind of altruistic and wonderful. I read history as my undergraduate degree, and one of my friends who was at another university came to visit quite close to kind of the February time before finals, and I was like, well, what are you doing next year? And they said, oh, I'm going to do a law conversion course because I'm going to become a barrister. And I went home that night and I was like, but I won all the debating prizes and mooting prizes at school. I was really good at public speaking. And so I looked up about how to become a barrister and made an application that evening because so I didn't necessarily do the massive amount of research. And actually I was too late to apply for the GDL scholarships because obviously you should have applied earlier in the November, and it was already February. But it was because kind of I'm dyslexic, so my written work was never the strongest, but my spoken work was always better. So I had naturally assumed I would go into a career with advocacy. But then, panelists, how did your universities help you? What opportunities were useful? Lidia.
I applied to be a student mentor, which perhaps at first doesn't necessarily link it to the job description. But as part of being a student mentor, I had to deliver talks or workshops to students. And this was the number one thing that panels would ask me about, because sometimes the number of students could be 40, 50, 60. And it was really about how you would deliver the talk, how you would keep people engaged, what kind of resources you would use for that talk. So that was the number one work experience that I took from university. I then, of course, used the Careers Advice Centre when I applied for scholarships, when I applied to volunteer at the Law Centre, or when I applied for mini pupillage. Jess.
Harry, what help have you had from university? Or
I did my degree with the Open University, and as such, you are what's classed as an independent learner. So therefore, it's much more difficult to engage with a campus in terms of locking into that experience. But what the university run is what's called an Open Justice Centre, which is a significant pro bono project. And what I did from an early stage onwards is engage with that. And there are a myriad of opportunities out there in terms of using pro bono and being quite strategic, really, with an aim towards your ultimate career goals in areas maybe that you want to explore, areas that you might want to specialise in. And certainly for our audience out there, it's really important to understand in terms of access to justice at the moment. You'll all know this, I expect, that access to justice is quite difficult. Pro bono is taking on a bigger responsibility than it probably did previously. But what's important about that is it creates massive opportunities for students to really get themselves involved at a very early stage in getting their legal experience, and in particular in terms of building that CV from a very early stage. And also volunteering is obviously a very positive thing in and of itself.
And then Emily, and while you're at it, Emily, you can also answer the question why you chose the CPS rather than going into chambers.
Yes, of course. I'll deal with that last then.
Yeah.
In terms of experience at university, I think picking up some things different to what's already been said, I think being a member of societies, whether debating or mooting, is really, really helpful. Something that you can put, students can put on application forms, and also being a committee member is really useful as well. Lots of skills you can get from that, which you can put on scholarship applications and also pupillage applications. I also found attending talks really helpful, because when it does come to applying for pupillage, if you're applying to somewhere where you've never done a mini pupillage at, or you don't have much direct experience with them, if you've been to a talk where a member of that chambers has been on the panel, you can use that to make the question of why this chamber's a little bit more direct. So I found that really helpful. And also just taking advantage of careers advice. So I know careers advisors were really, really good at my university and coming into lectures and letting us know what support they could offer us. So I found that very useful. In terms of why I went for the CPS rather than chambers, I did apply to chambers and I was very open to being self-employed, but the idea of being self-employed did frighten me quite a bit. It's something which I knew nothing about, and I just like the idea of having employment benefits and still having a team around me. I also feel it's a better work-life balance, and I knew that from talking to people. So essentially it was just the benefits really of being employed that attracted me to the CPS, and now I'm here. I see that there's so many opportunities to try different things, and talking to people at the bar, I feel I have a little bit more control over the types of cases I want to do, which I'm very, very early into my career, but eventually I believe that'll help me to specialise in what I want to specialise in that area. So I think there's a lot of benefits in choosing an employed pupillage.
And I should say I did a pupillage in chambers and was in chambers, but I ended up in a solicitor's firm via working in New York, for example, doing arbitration. And I think realistically, the solitude, I'm a commercial practitioner, and so you actually don't go to court that often, even if you are a self-employed barrister in chambers. And I much preferred the teamwork of being in large teams. So I think that's probably, I thought I wanted to be self-employed, but actually later on I discovered I probably was probably was better in an employed context. Although ironically, because when you become a partner, you're no longer, I'm actually self-employed again because I'm a partner. So it kind of comes full circle. For me, I obviously didn't really take advantage of anything the university was offering because I was a history student and I was, very late thinking about becoming a lawyer. So it was when I really did my GDL, I had to kind of build very quickly a legal CV. And what I would say for kind of students, when I look at forms and I do I've done lots of sifting for grades for scholarships, and I've sat on those scholarship panels for years now. And I also do the recruitment in my firm. And I expect to see public speaking. If they want to come to the bar, they have to show that they want to be advocates. And I'm always astounded every year. There is one or two students who say in their scholarship interviews that they're not interested in public speaking. And then I'm like, well, why are you coming to the bar then? So you need to have debating and mooting, and as was said by Richard, like, it doesn't necessarily matter. I don't need to see you won a competition. I need to see that you're trying at it. And then education on life at the bar. So every court in this country, unless it has in camera on it, is open to the public. And if people are genuinely interested in legal education, they should be kind of just dropping into a court on an afternoon and watching. And it's a great way for when it's interviews to bring up what you've seen, because particularly if it's a criminal case at the Bailey or something like that, you probably have seen something quite exciting. So it gives you something to talk about, and it also shows to the interview panelists that this person has a wider interest in the law. They're not just going because their university course is making them go. They've done it in their spare time. And that's because mini pupilages are a given. Basically, everyone needs at least 2 or 3 on their form. But again, if you've got less, I'm a bit suspicious that you're not really serious. Marshalling, judges are actually really open to this. I sent letters to various different levels of court when I was a student, and all of the judges, and I'm talking from the Court of Appeal downwards, I didn't dare try the Supreme Court, said yes, I could come for a day or 2 days or even a week. And that was really fascinating. Even though I never practiced in immigration, spending a week with the immigration judges was really actually kind of eye-opening and made me probably a better lawyer all round. And then kind of the wider interest in the law points, the pro bono work. There are, for students, often support through court, or the Citizens Advice Bureau takes a lot of student helpers. And I still think I did every Friday in the family division. Again, I didn't apply for family pupillage. I wasn't going to be a family barrister, but it was a really great way of dealing with clients, and probably taught me a huge amount spending those Fridays at the family division. Also, made me think I would never want to get divorced. But, so that's the kind of wider interest in law. But like the other last thing to say is to reassure our students, they don't have to just do legal stuff on their forms. It doesn't have to just be legal. They should also enjoy themselves at university. And there are many other ways of showing that you'll be a good barrister through kind of leadership, decision-making, problem solving. So they should enjoy their sports teams and, dance and their music. They shouldn't feel that they have to get rid of hobbies and to only dedicate themselves to legal activities so that their form looks entirely legal. Actually, it's really quite important that they're a rounded individual, because that will actually make them a better barrister as well. So also when I'm looking at forms, I'm also looking at kind of personality. I want to see what someone's actually passionate about. So then, when would you recommend that students start engaging with the ins in the profession? Like, Gary, when do you think's the best time?
I can only speak sort of personally, because I think it probably depends upon you as an individual. I think you have to be strategic about this and think perhaps as early as you can. However, it will also depend upon sort of things like your workload and other things at a time. One tip I would recommend, I guess, is to look at what's happening locally, particularly if you're outside of London, and look at any events that you might be able to just attend and do a little bit of networking at, or any local competitions, whether it be mooting or essay competitions that chambers run. And that just gives you an opportunity to sort of, if you like, dip your toe in the water very early with the profession. Get yourself noticed, make some contact, potentially informally. And I think that's probably as valuable as sort of making big decisions like which inn you're going to join or whether you're going to go for a scholarship. I always think it's best to perhaps take a step back first and see what perhaps people who are a little bit ahead of yourself are doing and take on that learning and then apply that to your own circumstances for good and sort of more developmental reasons as well. So I would say be early, but be strategic and think locally to begin with.
Emily, Lydia, do you have any additional thoughts?
I would concur with Gary about being early, although I have to say I was nothing but strategic. And that is probably my reason for saying try and get involved as early as possible, because I was never an expert at managing the law fairs or the law talks or engaging with people or having a conversation with people from the profession, and probably speaking with people from the profession in those early years are not one of my greatest moments, but you do become better at it. And so if you start early, it gives you the opportunity to perhaps not be as good initially and then develop and be good at it by the time when it really counts.
Emily, do you have anything?
Yes, I would echo what everybody said, really, but just to add to that, I think I went to university in Liverpool, so I know for a lot of students who aren't close to London, it can be quite expensive to get to London. So I would just encourage universities to look at what support's available from the inn. So, for example, I know my inn, Lincoln's Inn, offers university dinners, and they offer funding for law societies, which is available for people to apply to. So I would just encourage any universities that have students who may not otherwise be able to afford to get involved within the inn early on to have a look if there's any financial support that they can give to them.
And this is why I think Gary's point was so important, that it can be local as well. You don't, I mean, there is a horrible tendency sometimes for the bar to be London centric, but actually there are more barristers practicing out of London than there are in London. And that's really important to remember. So there's lots of opportunities. It doesn't matter if you're in Preston or in Bristol or in, you know, Taunton. There are chambers in all those places, and there's opportunities on those places as well. Preparing for kind of the scholarship element, which we've already heard some about. One of the things I would say is that kind of success breeds success. So I'm always astounded when people tell me they didn't apply for the scholarships at the inns because they didn't think they would get it. Like, everyone should be applying, because if you get a scholarship, it's a kind of mark of approval, which will give confidence to chambers for when you go forward to pupillage. So the first thing to tell all your students is like apply. And as was already said by Richard, if they don't get it first year, that doesn't matter. They can apply again. And in fact, you can apply to a different inn. If you think, in fact, you might do better at a different inn, having done more reading and thoughts about it. So for those kind of scholarship, for the preparing for the scholarships, I would say read the websites of the inns really carefully. And certainly at Grays now, we give away the marking scheme. So it's quite formulaic. And there was a slide about STAR. Frankly, it's quite easy to work out what kind of questions are going to be asked of you. If there is a section on problem solving, there is only so many ways a question can be asked about problem solving, for example. So I don't want students to be over-rehearsed in their answers, but they certainly can have thought a lot. And the students who have prepped and, you know, have given thought to, okay, if I'm going to be asked about a situation where I had to solve a problem, what is the example I'm going to use? If they've thought about that before they go into the interview, they're going to give a much more coherent answer than if they suddenly are presented with it and have to like squint up and look at the ceiling and think for like 20 seconds, because the interviews are only kind of 15 minutes long. I would advise that, a bit like revision, they should kind of bullet point on a card, so they have a flashcard that they've been revising from, so that actually when the question comes on, say, decision making or problem solving or something like that, they've already got the example. And then practice. there has been some discussion on mentoring. There are lots of different ways of getting mentors, lots of different organisations, but mock interview practice, I think, makes a big difference. I do a lot of mock interview practice for students at all different levels, from those applying for, UCAS into university, all the way up to people doing pupillage. And some people are much better at interview than others, and some people need a lot more work, basically. But practice, doesn't matter who they are, no one comes 100% first time. So just you should tell your students not to be kind of embarrassed about this. They should practice and seek out people who are, it can be their parents, it can be a sibling, it can be a friend, but they should need practice. And then they should seek feedback and self-reflect. So the other advantage of having a mentor is that they will hopefully be able to point out where kind of work can be made on answers, or where there's a kind of gap in the CV. So back to that resilience point on the slide, people need to be able to take on criticism, because in fact, the bar is probably one of those professions where 50% of the time you're going to lose, like in court. So you need to kind of be able to take the knocks and get back up. But from the panelists, are there any other kind of tips for preparing for scholarship interviews that you have got?
I would say simply that I am one of those people that had to apply more than once. I got the scholarship on the third attempt, and I am also an example of someone who applied at a different inn initially, didn't get, of course, a scholarship, and then I went to a different inn. But in terms of preparation, nothing else apart from what you've already said, Lucinda. But resilience is definitely one feature that you must have at the bar, otherwise it's going to be very tricky. Aside from applying for scholarship three times, forgive me, I also applied for pupillage for 6 years in a row, so be prepared for that.
Lucinda, can I jump in there regarding the scholarships, please?
Yes, of course.
So what I did, and this is not a template for success, but it's just sort of my perspective on it. The first thing is, the trend has sort of followed really throughout these questions, start early. Scholarships is like a season. It starts early autumn, it ends sort of mid-autumn. So treat it as part of your academic year. The first thing that I did is that I took a notebook, plain, empty notebook, and I used that and treated it as a project. So I just wrote loads and loads of stuff down. There was loads of self-reflection in there. I did my internet research. I looked at scholarship criteria. I thought of likely questions. I thought of my best examples. I edited and rewrote them lots and lots of times. And it's a good opportunity really to engage with yourself in that process of self-reflection. Because if you start to think about it more deeply and you prompt your students to do that, they will find things that they've done in their life and things that they do that they would never have used as an example, but actually provides a brilliant example that will help to show and demonstrate their ability to become barristers. So I would urge you to prompt your student to think about the transferability of stuff that they've done. Lucinda mentioned earlier things like if they've played sport, if they've been musicians, if they've had even part-time jobs, because they will all provide things that demonstrate skills that are applicable to the bar. For instance, if you've had a part-time job and you've had to deal with an irate customer, or you've had to deal with people from a wide variety of backgrounds in that context as well, everything is valuable. And if you can absorb that and put that down and treat it as a project, I think it gives you a great chance of success, because I think you will become more confident in the best examples that provide the best demonstration of yourself in order to succeed.
Just like to follow on that, Gary, because authenticity, I think, is really critical to the students. That I think sometimes they put on forms what they think that scholarship or pupillage panels want to see, but actually what I want to see is the person in front of me. And what you said about transferable skills is absolutely true. It almost doesn't matter what your example is. Your skill is showing that what your example is applicable to why you'd be a good barrister. So, for example, my teenage job was a petrol pump attendant and a cashier in a petrol station. And I used to explain that I had to deal with lots of customers, customer facing. and therefore that made me kind of good at dealing with people in difficult situations when someone didn't pay for their petrol, etc., that kind of stuff. So even though it's completely irrelevant to law, if you can show how it will become useful and is a useful skill, and pretty much every skill is actually useful for the bar, then that's how you do it. Then so moving on from the kind of the scholarship, hopefully everyone gets their scholarship, and then for pupillage interviews, which are a slightly different beast, but actually if you've done your prep, like Gary has said, for the scholarship interviews, you can recycle some of the material for pupillage, because again, lots of the examples on the pupillage forms are going to be quite similar to the scholarship forms. What I would say, the advice to the students out there is that they should look at the CVs of the junior tenants of the last 5 years at the chambers they want to apply to, and see if their CVs overlay. As in, I deal with a lot of students each year, and the first thing I ask them to do, there's 20 spaces on the gateway, and then there's another kind of, well, there's many chambers which are outside gateway. So I always say you've got to be in it to win it. If you put in 4 or 5 forms, then you've only got 4 or 5 chances. If you put in 20 gateway forms and 5 off gateway, that's 25 chances. And I'm always astounded when people come to me and they say they haven't got pupillage for the last 2 or 3 years and they've only applied for 5 or 6 places. I know it's a lot of work, but this is where the early planning comes in. And if you've planned properly, you can recycle answers. By the time you do your 20th form, it will only take you half an hour, whereas the first time you do the first form will take you kind of 4. So people need to kind of plan their time accordingly to fill in the forms. But then I always ask them to list out what chambers they want to apply for, and then to consider, is it coherent? So we had an example earlier about people saying they wanted to do, applying to a family set, but all their CV and answers were criminal. You must make your form coherent. It must be tailored towards where you're going and the kind of practice area you want to do. And then kind of, I always say to them, split them into the kind of reach for the stars sets, the ones that would be great if you got the pupillage in, the kind of middle ground, which you're kind of comfortable, that's where you would be, best fit. And then actually put some bankers in, put some really kind of, if people are from, I had a student one year who was from Wales and she spoke Welsh, and I said, why have you put no Welsh speaking chambers on? And she's like, oh, I'm not sure, I really want to be in London. I was like, well, just put in some Welsh ones at the bottom, because you speak Welsh and that's a massive help, because there are court cases done in Welsh. And she got all of the Welsh chambers as offers and none of the London. She would have had nothing. And I'm glad to say, like, 5 years later, she's had she loves it. She's done really well. But any advice from the panelists as well about when it comes to applying for the pupillages, what you should be doing?
I would say in terms of getting experience, be bold about it. And I really say this from my own boldness. I saw a barrister sitting across from me on the train, and he had a folder, and I saw his name. I Googled him and I started the conversation, and that's how I got one of the mini pupillages. And equally, something that was touched upon earlier, when I went for the scholarship dinner, I sat next to a Supreme Court judge who, again, I asked him for some experience. It didn't materialize for various reasons, but ask around. People will generally be very willing to help you. The worst that can happen is that they will say no. And the other aspect that I wish to say in relation to the application, I can see the benefit of obviously using the STAR technique, but perhaps you have examples where it's best to start with the result. I did an internship at the ECHR, and one of the examples that I would use was working on a case which ended up being a judgment. And someone said to me, well, why would you put that all the way at the end? The person may not even read your whole answer. Start with that. I drafted a decision, which is now a judgment of the European Court of Human Rights. And so even in that respect, in the way you write your answers, be bold. If it fits the example to start with the result, as unconventional as that may sound, it may work to your advantage.
You obviously went through CPS, pupillage, application, etc.
Yes, the CPS application process was quite different to Chambers. It was they publish very well exactly what they're looking for. It's very clear what competencies they're looking for. So for me, I very much just drafted examples that I felt would perfectly meet that criteria. It was very clear in advance what they wanted. I also spoke to other people who had recently gone through the process and gained some tips from them. And I think that applies to Chambers as well. I think there's no harm in talking to junior members of Chambers and asking them what their experience was with the application process. There's a lot of stages to the CPS pupillage interview. There's a lot of competencies, as I say, and also tests that you have to do. I found that the university had paid for some sites where you could practice those tests, so maybe pointing students in the direction of those could be helpful as well. But again, it just comes down to preparation, as the other panelists have said.
Yeah, Gary, do you want to say anything about kind of how you're approaching pupillage applications?
Yeah, so very briefly from me, my approach to it is, in effect, you are going to vet your chambers, in effect. You're looking for something that's not just a good fit for them, but also a good fit for you. I think it will help enormously in terms of how you tailor your application, so that you can look at your evidence there that accords with what the chambers is all about, what their ethos is. Look at things like cases that they've been involved in recently that you might be prepared to talk about, and how that also accords with your aspirations for the bar. So that would be my my tip really, is to personalise.
What do panelists wish they had known in hindsight before they started this? If they could go back right to the start, if they were kind of second year students or third year non-law students, what do they wish they had known? And I will start by saying, I obviously, because I came to it late, I didn't know about GDL scholarships, and therefore I lost funding, which I'm pretty sure I would have been able to get in some way. And so I had to work quite hard to pay for the GDL, whereas it would have been a lot easier had I had funding for it. And there's been a question which I can see Jess is answering about mature students, so people who've got commitments. I had to compress all my kind of legal activity, like the kind of going to court, mooting, pro bono, into a much shorter time frame. So I wish I had started earlier, basically. But Lidia.
What I wish I would have known is that actually coming to it a bit later would be an advantage. When I was in university, or even during the bar course, I always felt that things had to happen now. Like the natural progression would be finishing the law degree, doing the bar course, starting pupillage straight away, etc. And every time I would meet people who would have that journey, I sort of felt that I missed out. Whereas now in practice, I often look at a client and think, goodness me, how would I have dealt with you if I was 25 years old? I probably wouldn't have had the skills to do it. And so I wish someone would, if looking back, I would have taken a bit of patience and a bit more enjoyment into the journey, and appreciating that actually getting to it a bit late may work to your advantage.
Gary, you might want to comment on that as someone coming later as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, your mature students will find that they've got hidden depths that they didn't know they had. things that they've probably underestimated about themselves in terms of their skills and abilities. One of the things that's always a key thing with being a mature student is organisational skills. You're probably used to doing that in terms of juggling your life anyway, but I would suggest find a routine. Routine's really important so that you know that you can devote study time to be able to have undisturbed periods where you can study. Weekends are often your friend. Sometimes you have to give up things that basically you would rather do, like perhaps going out and socialising. But it's all about finding that routine. And one of the benefits I've found in terms of people I've spoken to about the bar throughout the time that I've been at this is your age and experience is actually valued. This isn't just a young person's game. The attributes that you've got, the way that you will make decisions, the way that you will weigh things up and judge them is actually very good in terms of being a little bit older. As is the resilience. You will be used to life's knocks. They won't phase you as much because you've been used to dealing with them in the past. But the key thing in terms of juggling that time is, look, let's be kind of brutal about this. It's hard graft, and you've got to really put that in. And I'm sure your mature students do that. But it's all about making that as easy as you can for yourself by being as organised as possible. A certain amount of self-sacrifice and a certain amount of self-discipline as well. But also draw upon your family who are part of that journey with you and your friends to support you, because it's very lonely if they're not on board with you. If you can at all do this, just share the journey with them, because amazingly they'll share in your wins and your little victories and your successes as well.
Emily, any reflections in hindsight you wish you'd known?
Yeah, I would echo again what everybody has said, but given that I'm now an employed pupil, I wish I'd have known a little bit more about opportunities to become a barrister in an employed setting. I don't know what other universities are like. Certainly at my university, it was never something that was pushed, and I didn't really know it was an option until I came to apply to pupillage and seeing a CPS pupillage on the gateway. And actually, I think if they were promoted a little bit more, it may attract a few more people. I do a lot of these kind of talks, and I'll often talk to people who are mature students and have got children and worried about the pressures of that, or people, women particularly, who want to start a family. And I think if employed opportunities were pushed a little bit more at universities, then that would be a positive thing. It was quite frightening when I got the offer of an employee pupillage, because I knew very little about what my experience was going to be. So in hindsight, I just wish I'd had more guidance about that. I know certainly the CPS are keen to get into universities and let them know the opportunities that we offer. And if that's something any careers advisors don't have a contact with, I'm happy for my email to be shared, and CPS can do something, a talk, anything, just to promote those opportunities.
And that's great. I mean, just to build on that, as someone who's chaired the employed bar over the years, there's not just CPS employed pupillages. As I mentioned, there's the government legal department has got employed pupillages as well. There's also the armed forces. So if there's any students who are particularly keen on like officer cadet training, etc., it's like guidance counsellors and kind of careers people out there, there are other ways of getting pupillage. So the CPS and the GLD are the two biggest, but actually there are even American law firms that offer pupillage in the City of London, and it's very little known, and lots of people come to it quite late and maybe on their third round of pupillage. I've spent a decade trying to get people to kind of get the news out earlier to students, because there is a kind of bottleneck at pupillage. There isn't enough spaces for everyone to get pupillage every year, but there are certainly areas where there's a lot less people applying, and so this is where kind of being strategic comes in. If you want to guarantee yourself a pupillage, don't apply for the set that's got 1,000 applicants and 4 pupillages, but go for the set where there's 30 applicants and 4 pupillages. And I think that's kind of one of the ways you can help your students to be more strategic. And I just wanted to kind of finish by saying that yes, academics are the kind of the primary base, but there's then loads of factors layered on top, which I hope has been kind of explained while we've been talking, that it's you know, you need to demonstrate interest in the law, you need to demonstrate advocacy, you need to demonstrate some kind of social pro bono, and so as someone who's been practicing quite a while now, every single person who has been hungry for it and actually wanted it, and Lidia might be an example of this as well, the people who kept going and kept improving, they didn't get knocked back the first time and then just give up. They've all found a home at the bar. So I would really ask you to convey to your students that, you know, this is a great profession. It is hard work to get into it, and it's hard work when you're in it, but it's incredibly rewarding. And those who want it, in my experience, get it. I don't know if the panelists want to have anything to say on that. Yeah.
Simply just to add that people would often ask me, you know, well, why did you continue putting yourself through that? And I often ask myself that question, particularly when the pupillage season came. But I have had other jobs within the criminal justice system, and it was never, I never gave up on the idea. And so I said, well, what was the other option? The other option was to give up. And to me, it wasn't an option really, because I still wanted it just as much as I wanted it in the beginning. I do not want to underestimate for 1 second how difficult it was. I mean, every time January came, my soul was just absolutely destroyed before it even started. But, you know, give it your maximum go. Obviously, you can apply 5 years post the BPTC. I applied, I think it's called something different now. I applied for 6 years because I did the bar course part-time, and so I got a year extra. But I was literally on my last year. I wouldn't have had any difficulty, I would like to think, with extending it, because I was working within the criminal justice system, and so perhaps it would have been easy to get an extension in terms of applying past the 5 years post-qualification. But by all means, give it a go to the maximum, and it may just surprise you.
I think nearly all of the questions that have been asked have been answered. I can still see that some are being typed, but I'm not sure if, in fact, if it was possible to ask live questions anyway, as in oral questions out loud. But I would just say to anyone out there listening, if you've got any last questions, please put them in so that they can be answered. But otherwise, I think we're probably soon to be wrapping up.
Could I just interject? Sorry,
yes.
Lucinda. I think Alexis will put just another slide up. I'm sorry, it is a feedback form. So I appreciate that it's not necessarily the sexy way to end the webinar. But yeah, we can't put a link in the chat. There's the QR code there if you want to do it on your phone. That would be amazing. It is really short, and it's just to make sure that we have provided like a helpful webinar for you. And if you want any kind of comments noted, then you can send those. There will be a link in it as well in terms of the follow-up email that we send. Alexis will kind of sort the recording of the webinar, and that will be put up on YouTube, and the link will be sent to you. I'm not sure how quickly Alexis will be able to actually get that done, so hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow, and that will be sent to you. And obviously then you can share the link with colleagues who maybe weren't able to attend today or kind of didn't register, but everyone who registered for the webinar will receive that kind of follow-up communication, so that they've got the recording and all of the kind of essential links that then they might want to send on to students. So yeah, so that was just a final plug. If there are any more comments from the panel, please do feel free, but just thought I'd jump in there.
There's been a final question from Jeff, which I will answer live rather than type, which is, beyond the altruistic and job satisfaction clearly communicated, we haven't discussed salary reward in terms of potential graduate bar route outcomes. Is there a scale that can be shared? Solicitor rates are much more commonly discussed, especially given the NQ salaries for US law firms hitting astronomical levels. Yes. I have experience obviously of both sides. The range at the bar and the range at solicitors is huge, And there are various times in your careers, if you're inside a solicitor's chambers or inside a solicitor's firm or in a chambers, where you will be paid differently. So as a commercial barrister, for example, pupillage, when I did it, I was paid, because you're not taxed, very importantly, for your first 6 months, I was actually paid more than if I'd been in a solicitor's firm. Now the top pupillage is at 80,000 untaxed for 6 months, but the top and the trainees in the top firms are less than that. So in fact, if you're a top commercial set for a pupillage, you're being paid more. As a junior tenant, for the first couple of years, you probably earn slightly less than, say, you're at a US firm being paid 180 as an NQ. So you'll be slightly less, but there will come a point, probably 7 years into practice, where you will overtake your contemporaries in solicitors' firms. And then when your contemporaries in solicitors' firms become partners, they would overtake you again, because you're like to become a partner at like 10 years. But then if you become a silk in the commercial sphere, which will be more like 18 years, you'll overtake your partner contemporaries in law firms. So it's different stages of the careers. The money will be different. I mean, if you really wanted to play the system, you'd keep switching between being in a solicitor's firm and being in chambers to maximise your income. But I'm not that strategic, and I don't think many people are. But all the pupillages on Gateway, they say what the award is for pupillage, and most of the chambers will also say what the average is for the first few years of practice for those chambers. So your students can work out roughly what they would get, in the same way that solicitors' firms' rates are published. So it is the material is available. It's not entirely kind of dark out there. But I think that takes us to 11:30. So just wanted to thank everyone who attended, everyone who contributed, and I hope you found that helpful. Yeah. Okay. Bye then.
Bye, everyone.